Welcome to Leadership Under the Microscope, a production of JR Global. Our current series is Leading in Crisis and focuses on how leaders react to and perform in time of turmoil. The emphasis today is on the arts and education sector. Here is your host, JR Klein.
Aaron and Alex are entrepreneurs that have started the USIC Team, which is a software company that will be launching their first product in about a month. USIC for Business is a recruiting tool that helps record labels, talent agencies, and management companies find new, upcoming talent to sign to their organization. Success for USIC in Business is building a bridge between independent artists and financial opportunity. Since its inception, the USIC team has been built on the principle of inclusive capitalism. It has guided their corporate governance and goals based upon the triple bottom line and works tirelessly to consciously include the impact of their decisions on their stakeholders. Aaron Emanuel was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. He graduated from the University of Southern California's music business program in 2000. His senior thesis focused on sustainability and inclusive capitalism in music and provides a toolkit for industry to develop their sustainability goals. His passions are music and progressing capitalism so that it benefits everyone equitably. He is currently a candidate for a Master's of Public Policy at the University of California, Los Angeles, with a focus on advanced technology and criminal legal policy. He has experience in a variety of music businesses, including a major label, a startup, an artist management firm, and a live event company. Alex Hively was raised in Boston by two entrepreneurial parents. His life purpose was defined by his grandfather, who said, "Leave more than you take." He has a passion for music and has spent his professional career in the software technology industry and startup world. He graduated from Harvard University 2019 with a concentration in classical history and a minor in economics. He is an essential optimist, constantly seeking the brighter side of life and business, and always making sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. He enjoys learning and reading and sports like basketball, golf, and surfing, and has dedicated his life to manifesting inclusive capitalism. This passion was born after meeting Lynn Foster de Rothschild, the founder of the Coalition for Inclusive Capitalism, who shared the vision that there's a world where capitalism works morally, equitably, and sustainably for everyone. Well, today we're privileged to have Alex Hively and Aaron Emanuel with us from the USIC Enterprises, and we want to welcome both of you to the program.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So excited to be here.
Well, this is going to be a great discussion. The discussions that we've had before have been horizontal and vertical and all at the same time. And so I'm interested to delve a little bit more into the way you think about your business, the way you think about your entrepreneurial efforts that you've been going through for the last some time. And as we start the conversation, as we just heard in the introduction, it would be interesting for us to sort of learn a little bit about the development of USIC, one of these third-party platforms that's poised to reshape the industry. Tell us a little bit about your environment. How did you get here? What's your story?
Thank you. So prior to USIC, I spent my early professional career in the music industry. And while working for the sales and data team at Microscope Records, in the spring of 2019, I discovered a way to reverse engineer consumer recommendation algorithms from a few of the major streaming services. So this allowed me to provide key insights for anyone looking to find new talent. And I took all the money I made from that job and my next job, and I put it into building out my vision. I tested that early version of the product with some target customers, and not long after got some incredible KPI validation. I knew pretty quickly that I'd created value that could solve problems for the industry, but I really wasn't sure how I wanted to bring it into the world.
And this is Alex Hively speaking, and thank you so much, JR, for having us. Aaron and I met in the spring of 2019, right after the inception of his product idea. And we connected through our musician friends, and our friendship grew through our passion for criminal justice reform, actually. We attended congressional hearings and canvassed for ballot initiatives together for change in the space of criminal justice reform. And then in March of 2020, I had just been laid off from my job because of the pandemic. And I knew that I wanted to start a music software platform. I had had that vision for a long time. I wanted to solve the problem of connecting music lovers. I saw a lot of value to be created there. And I knew that Aaron was working on his project and had been working on this product for about a year now. And I pitched him on joining forces. And we agreed that together, with the help of technology, we could build bridges where moats exist in the music industry. And we share the desire to be agents of change in this world. And we knew that we could build a company that proves progressive and moral business is the future of successful business.
That's very interesting. So that's how you got together, and you began to put this enterprise together with your idea blocks and go vertical with it. How did you? What's your team look like today?
The team is myself and Aaron working full-time diligently, and we have a few other part-time co-founding members, two technical people, one music industry leaning person, and we're lucky to have a large network of advisors who help us from making the mistakes they made, and a few freelancers, one of which we're very excited about. Our freelance developer, his name is DeMarcus Matthews. He is a graduate of the Last Mile program. And for those who don't know the Last Mile program, the Last Mile is an NGO that trains incarcerated humans to code and sets them up with jobs after they're freed. And the founders, Beverly Parenti and Chris Redlitz, and their team have truly come up with an incredible means of changing the world. I mean, the proof is in the data. The Innocence Project says that the American recidivism rate is like 65% right now, and the Last Mile's recidivism rate is 0%. So shock. You give hard, practical, high-paying skills, and they don't go back to prison. And so, yeah, we're really excited about DeMarcus's future with our company. And yeah, I think that sums up the team.
That's good. That's good. You know, you're pretty much sort of an electronic enterprise. You know, a lot of it is based. It's based on the internet, and so you might think that you were almost bulletproof when it comes to some kind of crisis, or, for example, this pandemic thing, which was the epitome of an unplanned event. You know, it came at us quickly, very little warning. How did that, when you began to get into this thing back in the end of 19 and beginning of 20, how did that present it to yourself when you initially saw it? What were your thoughts as you began to move into it?
Yeah, I mean, really great question. I would say that we know that we're not bulletproof, but we know that we can survive being shot, I guess, if that makes sense. My grandmother at the beginning of the pandemic told me that the Chinese symbol for crisis is the combination of the symbols for danger and opportunity. And we knew that with all the danger the media reported every day, the pandemic would be one of, if not the greatest catalysts for change and innovation in our lifetime. And we knew that with all the disruption that was bound to occur, like the loss of jobs and work from home, et cetera, we had to rapidly figure out how we can turn the disruption into our advantage. And with all the inequities in our economy bubbling to the surface like never before, we felt like the pandemic gave us the space to be loud and proud about our mission, and for that to not seem so radical and countercultural, but rather empathetic. Because the music industry took such a hard hit with the pandemic, our reaction was that now more than ever, we need to spread our message as wide as we can, and a platform like ours is needed. And we have to get this out the door as soon as possible. And I'm happy to talk more about the mission as well.
Why don't you just give us the 50% version of the mission? I'd be interested. I think our listeners would be interested in hearing that too.
Yeah, totally. The 50% version is that capitalism in general as an economic system is not yet optimized for the whole. And there's a lot of very intelligent and powerful people thinking about how can we optimize capitalism for our entire economy and for everyone from the bottom percent to the 1%. And they're calling it stakeholder capitalism, human capitalism, as Andrew Yang says. We like the name inclusive capitalism, and there's a coalition for inclusive capitalism formed by Linda Rothschild and a number of influential people. And it's about how can we restructure corporate governance and goals to optimize for the triple bottom line, right? Making people and the planet as equally important to our structure as profit. The idea is that you see the wealth gap that has grown over the past 40 years. The 1% has a very bad rap. There's incredible corporate distrust, and I think in general there will be, as Jacqueline Novogratz says, a moral revolution in the way businesses run. And I think Gen Z won't take anything else. That it's going to be the standard for business in the future. And so there's still a lot of stakeholders who are from that boomer generation, but we want to get ahead of it. We know that in the future, to stay relevant, you are going to have to be doing your sustainability reporting, your diversity reporting, and proving to the world that you are good for the world. And that's sort of going to be the ante. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not, you don't have space to be a Facebook in the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And Aaron, anytime you want to jump in, feel free. This thinking and strategy that you have as you sort of moved into this pandemic, this crisis area, it really speaks a lot to the idea of equity, to being able to think about community rather than individuality, if you understand what I mean. And that seems to be a defining characteristic of what I would call transformational leadership, where your thinking is a lot more strategic in the community than not. So I'm interested that the mission, the strategy, the way you're thinking, I think is exemplary. But I'll bet.
And if you don't mind, JR, the one thing that I'd love to say is one of our strongest missions, and for anyone who listens to this, I would love your help in this endeavor, is to come up with a incentivization for the creation of companies in this structure. And I think there is room in the US federal government to make the B Corp concept as widely used and as widely spread as the LLC. I think there is a future where the government has standards for what does it mean to run a moral, ethical, sustainable, inclusive business, and a framework, tax incentivized, to be able to empower people who want to build companies like this and receive the strategic advantage for being good. And so that's one of our main focuses in general, is how can we be the structure that, can help act as a mold for one day what we hope is federally regulated.
Yeah. So that strategy then does bring you to a challenge. That's one of your challenges that you have. What are some of the other challenges you had when it comes to sort of implementing your thinking? And did the pandemic affect that, or didn't it?
I think one of our biggest challenges was, in general, like knowing that so much change was coming with the pandemic. We had to take leaps of faith in assuming what the music industry would look like at the end of the pandemic, whenever that was. We were building for a future that had less clarity than ever before. And we had to just trust our gut and keep the blinders on when necessary. Another challenge was networking, obviously. Who is so important to being a successful entrepreneur, and serendipitous opportunities to network disappeared out of thin air. And, we had to make an imperative to connect over COVID conscious activities like golf, and to not be afraid to shoot cold messages on LinkedIn and email people who, I was genuinely interested in and thought I might be able to provide value for. And for those of you listening who don't know, that's exactly how I met Mr. Klein. I heard him on a podcast with his friend Mahesh discussing inclusive capitalism, and I shot him a cold message. And, a year and a half later, here we are.
Were there any bigger technical issues, Aaron, inside of this that made you stay up late at night?
Staying up late at night because of the issues, no. Staying up late at night to think about how we could, just get this vision we had off the ground, yes. I think another challenge, we saw pretty quickly that companies, especially in tech, were indefinitely allowing their employees to work remotely. And we just kind of had to accept that our team having an office or even being in the same place wouldn't happen for quite some time. Even Alex and I have only seen each other a couple of times since March 2020. And, basically we were on the golf course, and when we first decided to partner up, and a week later I had to move home just due to, pandemic circumstances. And so we've only operated in a remote environment with a team that's, spread around the country. And so that was a challenge that we've had to just trust the process throughout the entire creation of the company. And I think, just to build on what Alex is saying about networking, the way it impacted the implementation of our strategy when building our network and our team is that we've taken the approach of making friends as the primary goal of most meetings, especially when meeting people for the first time over Zoom. And then, we would also always just have this strategy and the goal of discussing inclusive capitalism during as many conversations as possible. And the goal of that was really just to share about the movement that we were joining and create allies.
That is really a wise way of doing it. I say that I go around the world and do my business, but what I'm doing is really going around to visit friends, and we just do stuff together. And that's really what it's about. It's about those relationships, and I understand the idea that that this pandemic has put a strain on the process of relationship building. Mm-hmm. But now, after you've been in that for a while, both of you, do you see What are the values you see in doing it electronically versus face-to-face?
Interesting. It's a good question. Well, first of all, for anyone who has learned through this experience what the best ways to foster culture are through this virtual world, please, my name is Alex Hively on LinkedIn. I would love to learn. It's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing because, you know, there is nothing like pure presence of the here and now. I see you, I can touch you, I can feel you, whatever. I think for us, the benefits are convenience and what that does for employee or team member happiness. You know, it's not a pain to go to work. You just turn your computer on in your bedroom, you know, and it's easier. There's less resistance in order to, you know, get the wheels turning. I would say that's a strong advantage, at least for me. I wanted to work from home before the pandemic, you know, and then all of a sudden we were gifted it. And yeah, I think that the other thing is it's in a similar vein, like the lack of energy and resources expended in order to work. You know, first of all, talk about the climate. Like, you drive to work every day, that's more gas into the atmosphere. You spend money on an office space, that's money you can't spend on tech, positive impact. And yeah, I think one of the advantages, like, it now takes less and you now have to expend less in order to get wheels turning and, you know, get together and be successful. And I'm honestly very thankful for Zoom and Google Meet and the way they were able to sort of be the epitome of rapid thinking and development and speed in product iteration, because it's made this possible. And that's where big tech is a huge advantage for society.
So Aaron, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think things are going to go back the way they were, or are we on a trend here that's going to continue?
It's a great question. I think, for speaking about music, I think that the industry is going to come back booming later this year, particularly because of live music. It's been really exciting to see festivals being announced and tours being announced. And, you know, I think USIC Team is not only excited for this because we're ready for our souls to be filled with the beauty of live music again. You know, we see just an opportunity to really help artists connect with fans through live performance. And then in terms of our continued structure and how we're operating, I think, yeah, the flexibility that remote work has given our team is just like Alex said, a core part of our culture. And so that's definitely going to last with us throughout, you know, I think the rest of USIC Team.
It's been go ahead.
Just the one thing that I wanted to add is, I think a lot of people are trying to figure this out, right? I mean, I've heard a lot of very intelligent people talk about this. What is the optimal work environment? And we're seeing this 3 days in the office, everything else at home. We are seeing the entirely work remote, you know, empowered by companies. What I would love for our company is the ability to see each other at least once a week, if it comes down to it, for the culture, for the connection, because this is a long journey where you know, if it's your best, if it's one of your good friends you're working with, it's much easier to come and bring your best self every day and stay diligent every day. And um, I would love it if our entire company lived in the same, 30, 40, 50-mile radius so that we had that capability. But again, like, we don't have to come into the office every day and be productive. We can be productive from home. That's been proven.
Yeah, and statistics would tell us is that there probably is higher performance and higher productivity, and longer work hours and more focus with this sort of at-home workforce. And so that's very interesting. So when we get into this, and as we move forward, I'm going to guess that one of the things we probably learn from it is that one of the characteristics of the pandemic was its unknowns. It's what I want to call it, those sort of things that are the complexity of it, that from one day to the next you really didn't know what the situation was. What kind of impact did that have on you? Did that complexity connect with you at all, or did this idea of already, I would say most of our economies were forced into the future, but you guys got there voluntarily, even before the rest of us. Do you think that kind of complexity and confusion impact you? I want to hear what you think.
Absolutely. So I think, kind of as you just pointed out, the complexity and confusion gave us a lot of clarity. I think particularly, just to go back to the start of the pandemic, it was really just this wake-up call, and it really just emphasized the importance of inclusive capitalism for us. And although there was confusion, it was clear that the economic crisis really just exposed wealth and income gap between leaders and C-suites at major corporations and employees. And so, when we saw companies taking, leaders at companies taking tens of millions of dollars while they're laying off their employees, that wasn't really confusing for us. We just really understood that we had to intentionally close that gap in our company by limiting compensation ratios. And that was just an opportunity for us to provide a new model for other startups and big businesses. And then, I think even more so, the clarity that we got from last year was that building a tool that serves the independent artist community is the right and best decision for USIC Team. The crisis really enabled many people at home to take the opportunity to pursue their dreams as artists, using all the various digital music tools that they had available to them. And we saw this among a lot of our creator friends, and had many discussions about a new renaissance coming out of this time. And then this was validated because companies who support the independent artist economy have been winning throughout 2020 and 2021. I guess a couple examples would be Bandcamp had skyrocketing sales, and SoundCloud had its first profitable quarter during 2020. And then SoundCloud also recently announced changes to their payment structure to support independent artists. And then independent distributors have been getting major investments, like United Masters receiving an investment from Apple. And then I guess the last piece of clarity, if you will, that we really saw is that we not only needed to make a tool that provides business solutions to artists and companies in the music industry, we wanted to make a tool, and we understood that we needed to make a tool that actively empowers our users to make an impact. So this was implemented into our strategy pretty early on, we built it into USIC by highlighting voices of female artists and LGBTQ+ artists, and then we also use USIC USIC also showcases artists from marginalized communities. And we do that based on data from Harvard's Opportunity Atlas project. And yeah, we were able to test this social impact tool through supporting a couple NGOs with Get Out the Vote initiatives.
That's great. You know, both you and Alex have sort of pointed to this sort of trending of the industry as we move forward. And both of you have an optimistic view of what's going to happen. So what does have to happen in order for us to sustain this kind of trending? What has to happen? This isn't a multiple choice or a yes or no. It is, but just help me think through this. What has to happen so that this industry can sort of sustain this effort?
Well, it's happening. Music's not going anywhere. It's been universal since the cave days. I think that the growth of on-demand streaming is happening. You know, once humans have had a taste of any song, whenever I want, wherever I want, that's now the standard, and that's not going anywhere. And then with live music coming back, I went to a concert last night. I was at a concert 2 weeks ago. It's back, it's coming, and there's a level of just like shedding the snake skin that we've put over ourselves that has been this layer of sort of like anxiety and worry and stress that the pandemic has induced, and freeing ourselves of that, and you know, being excited to be with strangers again, listening to music and experiencing live music. I think additionally, to sustain the growth of on-demand streaming, the direct service providers and streaming services are going to have to find a way to pay artists more per stream. It's less, you know, it's ridiculous. And that's one of the things that I'm most curious in. And then the last thing I'll say, for the music industry in general, when we experienced the web, the music industry and the stakeholders fought against it. They were making so much money off of CDs. Why would we ever want to involve, you know, a website or online music listening? That seems silly. We're making so much money. And they took their biggest hit in the past 20 years, and then services like LimeWire and Napster popped up, where, you know, music was being the copyrights of music were being infringed, and artists weren't getting paid for their music. And we are currently in Web 3.0 with the blockchain, and the music industry has to have a blockchain strategy. You know, every high-tech company, maybe every company has to have a blockchain strategy, because we are in Web 3.0. And imagine trying to run a business now and not being on the web. That's where we're going to be in 5, 10, 15 years with the blockchain. And yeah, if the music industry doesn't want to take another huge hit to its economy, the power brokers and the large stakeholders must embrace the blockchain now and begin developing strategies for how will they find sustainable business in this new frontier.
I'll build off of that, Alex. You know, I think when you were kind of describing our mission earlier, and talking about how Gen Z in particular, right, wants this inclusive and sustainable economy of the future, right? It's become an expectation. You know, that's a big reason why we believe our company is in music technology, because, you know, young people are what allow the music industry to thrive. So in terms of right, audio on demand streaming and that coming back and continue its rapid growth, that will require its main consumers, which is young people. I have a couple of stats here, right? So 83% of 16 to 24-year-olds used audio streaming services in the last month. 63% of them used audio streaming services in the last day, right? So they're making up the majority of the industry's major revenue source. And so if this consumer base sees an industry pivoting towards justice, if you will, pivoting towards inclusivity and being sustainable, which includes paying artists fairly, they'll only have more incentive to continue to embrace audio on demand and to embrace any new technologies like, for example, blockchain that are coming into play as the industry grows.
I'm in no place to tell Spotify what to do, but with cancel culture nowadays, in just in our society, the way cancel culture has emerged as like something that is possible, that we've seen happen.
Yeah.
You've got to hedge for that future where there is a higher standard for how you run your business. Mm-hmm. Because if word comes out that Spotify, pays its CEO 320 times its average employee, and they're, running on servers that are terrible for the environment, and then all of a sudden a new sustainable streaming service pops up, that's where Gen Z is going. Mm-hmm. And as Aaron's saying, as much as you have to look forward in terms of like the tech, you have to look forward in terms of where is our like societal mold and value system going. Mm-hmm. And they go hand in hand with staying relevant and being a leading business in the future.
Great. That's a great discussion. Very, very good. In my mind, what we see within that discussion, I think, are some very essential, salient points that are worth sort of reiterating. And then you guys can comment on them a little bit before I start to ask you about the lessons that you've learned inside of this. One is that getting into the market and giving the market a taste becomes what tomorrow's demand will be. Mm-hmm. When people get some exposure to it, then they have more information, more data to help them make their decisions. My maternal grandmother, who was a teacher, said, if you want people to really understand what it is, let them hold it in their hands. And that's basically what you're doing. There's also this I'm going to say cultural desire. It's also almost a built-in DNA thing that there's a need in our cultures today. I'm not just talking about the US, but I see it in other cultures around the world, a need to once again begin sharing arts experiences. Opening up these venues so we can all get together and listen at the same time. That's sort of an undervalued experience, but this cultural societal need to be able to share those events. I think that's one of the things that is going to help and sustain this trend that you're talking about. And then one of the really important things for me is that we have to pay special attention to maintain equities in the industry at all levels. There's got to be equity in all the pieces of the industry. That kind of issue of, I hate using trite words like fairness, but the reality is that all levels of the industry at any place need to be able to have value and need to be able to be recognized and for the value that they give. And that gets played upon so often. You're talking about the way that the recording industry really had such a difficult time sort of accepting the change from CDs to streaming. There's a basic human characteristic, I think, that that is common, not just in the industry, but everywhere else. There's a direct effect of that fear of change. If at the beginning, I hear in you guys, if I give you guys any experience, I hear from the beginning that what you were doing is you were really thinking through what that change effect is going to have. And from this discussion and from other discussions that we've had, you really were thinking about not just, boy, we're going to get to this point, but what happens if we don't? We have a plan B, we have another plan B. It's really a very, I would say, cherished value of leadership is that asymmetric thinking. There's just not one way to solve a problem. There's a whole bunch of ways, but you just have to choose. And then Aaron, Alex, both, one of the other things that I heard in this discussion, that sustainability really is in the way that we can be expected to be exposed to and expected to either accept the changes in technology and eventually adopt them. And then that becomes the norm as we move forward. And what happens then is we're all set for the next time it changes. We can always look to the future, but to do that, we always have to learn from the past. And so here we are at a different time. We've gone through this stuff. You guys are, from what I can see from the outside, you guys are doing it right. You're taking it slow. You're thinking. You're analyzing data before you act, and you're moving into the launch of your business in a very a measured and strategic way. Share with me a little bit of what are some of the lessons that you've learned inside of this process, and either affected by COVID or not affected. But what are some of the lessons that you've learned that you apply going forward?
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, and it's been a pleasure to learn from you throughout this journey. You have been really helpful in guiding us and ensuring that we lead well. I also, just shameless plug, because this is what I dedicate my life to. We are launching in July. It's USIC.io. Request access to our beta, and we'll hopefully get you on there. I think that throughout this crisis, what I have found to be the most perhaps cathartic is the right word. I was thinking cathartic, then that can't be it, but perhaps it is the right word. What I've found to be most cathartic is being really bold in crises. To take us back to the beginning of the conversation, they are the greatest catalysts for change. And be bold and move quickly and agilely, because change is literally happening every day right now to a degree that is atypical in our lifetimes. And I think crises are a time to think about how you can break systems for the better with innovation and creative thinking. And I think the majority of people would think, be safe, hold all of my assets close to chest and don't take risks. And my take couldn't be more opposite. Crises are moments to go all in, take big bets, because big turnouts, could lie on the other side. I think that the other thing I learned is, in moments of crises, be a good, generous person. We should do that always, but in moments of crises, be a good, generous person loudly, not in an egotistical kind of way, but because truly it's what society needs, right? In crises, we need hands to lift each other up and help each other through it. And, you know, people can become very selfish in these moments. And I think those outliers shine through. The ones who, you know, in these moments are saying, what can I do for other people, are, you know, the ones that at the other, on the other side of the crises, you know, take themselves, you know, spiritually, but also aesthetically far beyond those who would say that I'm going to hide in my home and I'm going to take all my money out of all my investments and just sit here waiting for this to end.
I really want to thank you both for your engagement and your willingness to come and sit and think with me. This has been a very good discussion, some really brilliant discoveries inside of this that I'm thinking that our listeners are really going to be able to put to use, are going to be able to inject and infuse into the way they think. As you inferred in your last remarks here, Alex, leadership is really more about character than it is about toolbox. You know, good leaders act instinctively out of what they know, and rather than having to find the right tool to solve a problem, they're able to just be able to do it as a matter of what their character is dictating. So, unless anybody, either one of you, have any final thoughts that you'd like to put in here, any final comments?
Much gratitude to JR for having us, and I also would encourage everyone listening to Google the Coalition for Inclusive Capitalism and see the work they're doing and all of the research that they've done around, you know, how can we optimize capitalism for the whole. And JR, I loved your continued use of the word equity throughout this, because equality, someone said in a lecture once, is, hot take, a noble lie. Because, you know, one of the things you said, JR, is like, equity is about what you put in, getting what you deserve out. And I think that's what what the Coalition for Inclusive Capitalism is building towards. It's how can we build a system that is equitable for society? And my mom always said that ability is evenly distributed and opportunity is not. And how can we balance the idea of consciously including the less fortunate to create more opportunities for them, while also providing systems that are equitable so that they know if they put in work and if we put in work, that we'll get what we deserve out of it.
I'm just gonna again shower you with appreciation and gratitude, JR. You know, I think that Alex and I initially just used your blog post as guidance for our strategy. You know, figuring out last summer when we were just a few months into this thing, like, how can we be the best inclusive capitalists that we want to be? And you know, we really looked to your JR Global for resources, and now here we are. You know, you validating us as leaders is beyond anything I think we could ever imagine. You know, we just wake up every day, do our best, give it our all. And for someone of, you know, your stature, your expertise, your knowledge to tell us that we're doing it right, especially on a recording in front of all these other people, you know, just so much gratitude for you and you know, the knowledge that you've shared from always throughout knowing you. And I will also say, you know, before we started recording, you had mentioned, JR, that the opportunity here of this conversation is very intergenerational, and you know, I think that that's how we make change. It's not just one group of people. It's not just a Gen Z. It's not just, you know, boomers or whoever, right? Millennials. Like, we all need to come together. We all need to engage in discourse, and we all need to, you know, really figure out how we can create the economy and country and world that we all want to live in. So thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thank you for seeing us as leaders, and yeah, endless gratitude for you, JR.
Well, they're very kind words. Thank you very much. And I'm going to sort of close this with what Alex referred to, some of the quotes from his mother. I'll give you one last quote from my mother that has pretty much sums up this kind of thinking. She said, "None of us are as smart as all of us, and none of us are better than any of us." So the reality of being able to come together and to talk intergenerationally, and no matter where you are in the hierarchy of a company, no matter where you are in your day-to-day life, understanding that whatever you run into, whatever person, whatever situation, there's always a lesson to learn. So listen up. Again, guys, thank you very much. It was a great conversation, some brilliant stuff, and we'll talk again sometime.
I look forward to it. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you would like more information on leadership in a changing world, look for J.R. Klein's Oxford University Press published books on global business wherever books are sold. J.R. Klein is available for conversations about socially responsible business and inclusive capitalism. If you are interested in contacting us, call JR Global on 01 614 526 9118.